is Tomas,
My name is Elvis.
and we are part of Haley and the Boys. And we're going to be talking to you today about substance abuse in the workplace.
Alright. So, this article we found discusses the CEO's experience dealing with substance abuse, specifically cocaine. Before he started doing cocaine, he was a pretty well-respected CEO of an unnamed company. He chose not to discuss it in the article for obvious reasons. So he was pretty well-respected in the community. A lot of people liked him. He felt he was good at his job. Productivity was high. And one time at a meet and greet of some sort, a fellow CEO introduced him to some cocaine. And through that, he went through a downward spiral. And he discusses how he constantly did cocaine to try to advance his work, so a lot of sleepless nights, and this quickly led to addiction. And through the addiction, he suffered a lot of mental problems that involved him being angry towards his peers, angry towards his workers, and this led to irrational firings, irrational hirings, and other things that were kind of out of his control. So towards the end of the article, he discusses how he struggled to come to grips that he had addiction, and he struggled to finally beat this addiction. So this article kind of segues into our whole discussion here.
Thank you. And that transitions well into our broader picture of what is alcohol and drug abuse. And the definition of alcohol and drug abuse is the usage of illegal drugs and or misusage of prescription drugs and other illicit substances. And this can have a plethora of negative effects on the worker and the work environment as a whole. There's a key difference between drug and alcohol abuse and drug and alcohol addiction. Drug and alcohol abuse is more momentarily. It happens every once in a while, and the abusers typically transition into addiction. Abusers typically can quit easier than addicts, and abusers also can stop using for long periods of time, but do struggle with that. Now, in comparison, addiction is considered a mental disorder that should be treated and taken seriously. They're physical and mentally dependent to the substance and will suffer withdrawal symptoms when they are absent of the substance.
Wow, that's really interesting, Tomas. This leads me to wonder, what causes people to turn to drugs? Well, there are four major categories that abuse can be caused by. One would be psychological. So this would be stress, peer pressure, or just curiosity. If one of their friends are like, oh, do this cocaine, it's really cool. Someone's gonna be like, I have no reason to not do cocaine, they'll do it. Another one would be environmental. So some people are just raised in a situation where they're surrounded by other people doing drugs, and that's just how they're raised from a young age. So they'll turn to that. Same thing with the people you hang out with. That ties into peer pressure, so they go hand in hand. Biological goes more into the science of addiction. So the genetic history of addiction, science shows that if your father, grandfather, mother, grandmother have a history of addiction, it could get passed down to you. And mental health issues also go into this. People with mental health issues often turn to drugs because they don't know what else to do because they're suffering.
Thank you, Elvis. And stress. Stress is what all four causes of substance abuse have in common. All of them cause different types of stress, and stress is not necessarily bad. The definition of stress is the body's reaction to any change that requires adjustment or change. And we can see that the negative stress is called hindrance stressors. Hindrance stressors cause to an unhealthy increase in the amount of stress an individual experiences, and then this turns to strains. Strains is what forces or coerces an individual to turn to substance abuse in order to deal with the stress and better cope with the different struggles that he's facing, him or her is facing in their lives.
We can go into the side effects of abusing substances. So as listed here, side effects include drowsiness, a distorted sense of time, impaired memory, dizziness, poor decision making, and a loss of efficiency. All these things are extremely negative, especially when you're doing it at work. If someone is sleeping at work, that's not going to contribute a lot to productivity. If someone is making poor decisions, that might severely impact the project they're working on or their relationships with their coworkers. These side effects all hinder production, and the company, your coworkers, and even yourself will suffer because of it.
All of these side effects affect organizational commitment. Organizational commitment is on the part of the employee, their willingness to stay and be part of a single corporation. And when an employee is displaying these negative effects, you can see that they start displaying withdrawal behaviors. Withdrawal behaviors are horrible for the individual because it lowers their productivity and puts them at risk of being fired, and also for the organization as a whole because it lowers the output and hinders the operating cycle. We can see examples of withdrawal behaviors such as daydreaming, tardiness, long breaks, and absenteeism. And a result of this is high turnover rates, which is horrible and very expensive, very costly for the organization as a whole.
So after Tomas brilliantly broke down what organizational commitment is, I will now discuss what exactly job performance is and how abusing substances in the workplace affects it. So the definition of job performance is the work-related activities that are expected of an employee and how well those activities are executed, as well as how timely those activities are executed. So normally, if an employee were to not be on substances, their job performance would be pretty high. They want to keep their job, so they wouldn't have a low efficiency rate, and they would try to turn their work in on time. But if they're under the influence of substances or alcohol, these results may be delayed, there'll be late submissions, and very importantly, inaccuracies in their production. So if someone makes something, working on a project and it's inaccurate, they're going to have to suffer the consequences of that, which, as Tomas talked about before, could result in a turnover.
Excellent. Now we can transition into the relationship between job satisfaction and substance abuse. The relationship here, going back to what we were saying about organizational commitment, when an employee or somebody has problems with alcohol or is abusing substances, he or she will have a low organizational commitment because of their low job satisfaction. So in a way, substance abuse is a reaction, it's a coping mechanism of experiencing low job satisfaction that in turn will cause low organizational commitment, withdrawal behaviors, and just harm everybody involved.
That's really interesting, Tomas. Now, because we discussed how employees are affected by substance abuse, let's go on to discuss how the business itself as a whole is affected by substance abuse by its points. As you can see on these bullet points here, safety, turnovers, lawsuits, and publicity are all negatively impacted by employees abusing substances in the workplace. Because if an employee is on drugs or drinking in the workplace, they can cause harm to both themselves and to their coworkers. They're clumsier, accidents are more commonly occurred due to people being under the influence in the workplace. In terms of safety, employees that are under the influence are more likely to cause harm to both themselves and to their coworkers due to them not being able to fully be in control of their actions. Turnovers, as we mentioned previously, are also more common due to how inefficient these employees are while under the influence. And lawsuits are also more common if someone is under the influence because due to their poor work performance, they cause accidents or mistakes, and the customers who are purchasing from these companies might not get what they bought. And of course, bad publicity. If a company is seen as having employees who openly do drugs, openly drink in the office, that's not going to look good for the company, and people won't want to buy from them, and people won't want to work there.
So basically, companies have to react to this very dangerous topic, which is substance abuse in the workplace, because it harms not only the company and its production, but the personal lives and the health of its workers and employees. So a call for action would be stronger and more harsh drug and alcohol policies in the workplace, which would include a no tolerance policy, or provide aid with people that suffer from addiction and or abuse on an occasional basis. Tips and ways to cope with stress and negative stress and strains should be provided by the company in order to ensure that its employees live a healthier, more productive life. In addition, activities and support programs, support groups should be formed for employees that do suffer from substance addiction, substance abuse, and that as a whole would benefit the company and would help them create a healthier, stronger, more efficient work environment.
Wow, that was really powerful, Tomas. Thank you guys for enjoying our presentation. We hope this gave you a better viewpoint on exactly what drug and substance abuse in the workplace is, and we'll bring this issue to light for you guys for future reference. Thank you.